Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this event. And also, thank you if you've been watching any of the other events in Discoverfest. If you're not aware, we are in the middle of a whole week full of events, and it's been a total blast. Me and all the audience, we've been learning about business and marketing, and I just learned a little German. It's just so cool. And if you ever want to check out that schedule in the description, we have a link for that. You can see the whole event, all the past events, and what's coming for the rest of the week. But thank you for being here right now today. My name is Jonah from Discover, and we are talking to Thomas today. Thomas, how you doing?
Good, Jonah. How are you?
I'm freaking fantastic. I'm having a
Good,
blast.
good.
Yeah. And before we get started, just want to set a couple expectations. Now is normally the time when I encourage people to go into the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from and all of that. But you all are very comfortable with that. I love you're already blowing it up. We got some people from tuning in from Mexico and just greetings from Georgia, from I don't even what is NL? Do you know your states is no, I know I
No.
did. I should have paid attention in high school, but they're tuning in from all over. Just appreciate you all being here so much. And feel free to keep using the chat. Just let us know what you're excited to learn, where you're tuning in from, where you heard of Thomas, or where you heard it Discover. We love all of that. And pop any questions you have during the presentation if you have them and need to get them down. But we will have a dedicated Q&A after the presentation. So if we don't answer them right away, we're not ignoring you. We have that dedicated time where we can really give attention to all those questions. And a couple more things, just if you have to get up away from the computer or the dog comes in the room or life happens around you, don't fret. All of this will be available in a replay. It'll be on the YouTube. It'll be on the Discover event page. And it will also be emailed to you along with the replay if you RSVP to the event, along with the course offer, which we'll talk about near the end. But let's roll into this. Proper introduction. Like I said, we are talking to Thomas Brush, and we're talking about how to make indie games full time. Some topics we're going to cover is we're going to break down how exactly indie games are made and how to secure six figures before even finishing the production of the game. Little background on Thomas. He started creating his first commercial release in school and continued its development while working a desk job. He finished that game being completely self-taught. It was called Pinstripe. And since launching, the rest is history. He's consistently earned six figures in revenue for half a decade. His games Pinstripe and Neversong have launched on pretty much every single platform, all while he's grown a large following of over 215,000 subscribers teaching game development on YouTube. He even made a game for the world's biggest YouTuber in just 14 days. Love it. So that's who we're talking to today. I'm super stoked to dive into this, and I don't want to take up any more time so we can dive in. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Thomas.
All right. Well, some of you who are with me maybe know who I am, but a lot of you probably don't. But like Jonah said, we're going to talk all about how to make games. And the most important thing that I like to focus on is how to do it full time. And believe it or not, you can do this before you even finish your game. That's actually what I did. So we're going to talk about that. We did break this down a little bit, but we're going to cover how to make indie games, how exactly you make them with art tools, development tools, coding languages, but also how to make six figures with publishers, crowdfunding, platform deals. Platform deals are huge. We'll talk about that. And then just game sales. That's what most people think about when they think about selling indie games is, hey, I sell a unit for $5, I make $5, right? It's a lot more than that. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, we're going to talk about how you can get started no matter who you are, whether you're somebody who's, a little bit of experience in game development. Maybe you're a coder. Maybe you understand some coding languages or art or Blender. Or maybe you don't know anything at all. We're going to talk about how to get started. So really quick, here's why you should listen to me. Jonah mentioned a little bit of this, but I'm going to run through it as quick as I can here. I make indie games for a living. I also do YouTube for a living. I also sell online courses for a living. So I've got a lot of stuff that I do. But when it comes to just my game revenue, and I think that's really important to note because a lot of you are curious, how much should you make selling indie games? For me, because of features like Time Magazine, The Washington Post, PC Gamer, featured by Jacksepticeye, featured by PewDiePie, Matt Pat, I was able to raise money. I was able to secure money. I was able to sell copies of games. So there's a lot of different ways to make money. You can see here I've made almost $200,000 raised in crowdfunding. That's with Kickstarter. And those are for 2 of my games. That's Neversong and also Pinstripe. This is Pinstripe. This is a Nintendo Switch copy of Pinstripe. That was crowdfunding. And then once I did crowdfunding, I also secured some partnerships with publishers. And you can see here almost $500,000 over the years is secured from just advances and lump sum payments by publishers who want to work with me and take a cut of the revenue. And then finally, $450,000 in gross sales with multiple games on pretty much every platform. The only platform I haven't launched on is Google, Android, and the Google Play Store. And I guess we'll probably talk about that in a second here. So I'm going to talk really quick while this plays. This is a trailer for Neversong. Neversong, this is cool. My journey is probably different than what you would think becoming an indie game developer. And the reason I say that is because this game right here is called Neversong. Neversong was just last year, we partnered with Apple Arcade, and it is an exclusive game on Apple Arcade. By exclusive, I mean it's not on Google, the Google platforms. It is on Steam and Xbox and PlayStation, all that. But when it comes to mobile, it's exclusive to Apple Arcade. We're going to talk about that in a second. But this game, the reason my journey is so unique and so different, and maybe it's not unique to most game developers, but it's unique to people who are curious about making games. The reason it's unique is because this game was a game I made when I was 18 years old, and it was a free game, and I released it on a website called newgrounds.com back in the old days when we made Flash games as game developers. And basically those were free games. My journey was very slow. I didn't make some awesome hit and then make $1 million and I'm good to go, right? I released free games. This was originally a free game. It looked totally different. And it was just until last year, and I'm 31 now. I started making games when I was 18. I'm 31 now. And just now is when I'm releasing these big commercial games for PlayStation, for Xbox, partnering with Apple. So it's not that the journey takes 10, 11 years. It's that it did for me, and that's because I made so many mistakes. And we're going to talk about how you can speed that process up. It should not have taken me that long. And so we're going to talk about that. Okay, let me see if I can get this fixed there. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to discuss, the first subject is how exactly are indie games made? I think some of you probably already know this, but it's definitely good to get a refresh. There are basically 2 categories of how you make indie games. The first one is art tools over here. Art tools can be 3D or 2D, right? There's a ton of art tools. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. The ones that I recommend to my 260,000 plus subscribers on YouTube, the ones that I recommend to my 2,500 students on my course is Blender because it's free. 3D software is really, really expensive. If you could find free 3D software like Blender, you should use it. It's awesome. It's incredible. I also use Photoshop for my 2D games, okay? Photoshop is not free, but you can have a trial, right? Photoshop, I do recommend paying for. A lot of people ask me if I have any other 2D programs that are free that I recommend. I don't. I recommend that you pay the subscription for Photoshop because it is that good. And I'm inside of Photoshop pretty much the majority of my day. Dev tools. Now, this is how you actually take the artwork, put it into a game, and make it move and make it do things. That's using software called Unity. Unity's competitor is called Unreal. You've probably heard of Unreal Engine. Unreal and Unity are competitors. They're both incredible. So I recommend Unity just because it is free as well. Really cool. It's a totally free piece of software. And I guess the gas that makes the engine run, that's probably the best metaphor I can think of, is C#. That's the code that we write in to make Unity work, okay? C# is a very common language, and it's actually, in my opinion, the easiest language to learn outside of like a website's language like HTML. So C# is really easy to learn, and I teach all of that in my program, but we're not gonna go into the nitty gritty here. That's just the basics of how an indie game is made. So this is my 2D game. We talked about this earlier. This is Neversong. This was made in Photoshop and Unity with C#. So again, 2D games are made with Photoshop, or you can use something like Illustrator, which is Adobe owned as well, but I recommend Photoshop. So these are all Photoshop layers.
Thomas, can I interrupt really quickly? Because this is, I think, a really relevant question, just like for streamlining the whole approach. Hellhunter is asking, can you also create 2D art in Blender? Or is it exclusively 3D?
Yes, but it's always going to start in Photoshop. Like true 2D art
Okay.
is going to start in Photoshop. What people used to do is they would animate the 2D layers in Blender. So you'd have like a flat, a lot of you probably played Paper Mario. It would look like that. And you would rig it up, put the skeletons in, and then move the mesh around, right? You can do
Got
that
it.
now in Unity. So you don't really need to do it that way. Most of the time, artwork is done in Photoshop.
Gotcha. Appreciate you
Cool.
answering that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, moving on. This is my next game called Father. This is done inside of Blender, Maya, and also is it 3D Max? I can't remember. The reason I can't remember is because finally I'm at a point now where I can work with team members. So my team member is working on Father, but a lot of the artwork is done with Blender. Okay, so that's just an example of a 3D game. Now, the sun shafts here, you'd call them God rays maybe. The lighting, the mood, that's done with Unity, right? So you bring in the artwork, you place the lights, you place the character. Sometimes I do remakes. So on my YouTube channel, this is actually a remake of Shadow of the Colossus. Some of you might recognize this 2D boss as Gaius from that game. So I do 2D remakes as well, and I do those in Unity, and that's a more pixel art type game, right? And then this is C#. Looks incredibly intimidating to a ton of you probably who have never written any code. But what's cool about it is if you dig into it, like if you read this right now, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. And that's because it's written in a way that even laymen can understand. So you should never be intimidated by code because once you figure out the basics, the learning process really speeds up. All of this is covered in my program, by the way. We'll talk about that towards the end. I won't pitch it to you just yet. I really want you guys to try and wrap your head around how games are made. And then on this slide, most importantly, how you make money selling those games. Now, here's the cool part. Look at this. We've got 3 categories here that are associated with making 6 figures before you launch your game. So in this pre-launch category, the pink icons here, you can make 6 figures before you even launch your game. I've done this twice, and that was with publishers. So you can see here, publisher advances, crowdfunding, and platform deals, okay? So publisher advances are like, hey, we're going to give you 60 grand, and we want 30% of the revenue once you launch it. Here you go. And your bank account just like shakes when the money appears, right? It's a really cool feeling to have a publisher say, here's 60 grand, now make your game. The cool thing about that is you can finish your game before you even, or you can quit your job and finish your game before you even launch it, which is crazy. Most people think they have to launch a game, make some money, and then use that money to go full time. And I actually did it the opposite. Same is true with crowdfunding. I've had 2 crowdfunding campaigns. The first one raised $106,000. The second one raised about $86,000, and also another $10,000 was raised in the post campaign with something called Backer Kit. And then finally, this is really cool. This is new. New platforms are coming out like Apple Arcade, Google Stadia, and a lot of the subscription models for PlayStation and Xbox. These platforms just don't randomly get games. Same is true with Epic Games, by the way. They don't randomly just get games, right? They sign with game developers. So it's kind of like working with a record company, right? They say, hey, we'll give you this money and we want to put your game on our platform. It's different than a publisher. Here's why. You can actually get $60,000 from a publisher. Then you can get another $60,000 from Kickstarter. And then you can get another maybe $100,000 from a platform. You can do all 3. A publisher is not a platform, right? A publisher launches onto a platform. So what I've done is I work with a publisher, and that publisher then worked with Apple. Does that make sense? So the final way to make 6 figures, or just keep adding on to your 6 figures, is this purple icon here. And that's just launching your game and making money. Most people only think that game sales is where the money's at. And sure, if you have a great game, like if you're super talented, I'm not particularly talented. I make decent games. I'm willing to admit that. But there are some people, just a few people out there who can make incredible games. They make millions of dollars. That's Toby Fox, who made Undertale. That's the creator of Stardew Valley, right? These incredible indie games. They're not lucky. They're just really talented. Most of us aren't that. That's kind of the honest truth. Most of us aren't that, but it doesn't mean we can't take advantage of all of these ways of making income. All right. So here's an example of how you might pitch a game to a publisher. Okay. So if you were to say, hey, you know what, I've got a demo. It's a 15-minute demo. That's what I've done, by the way. You have a demo, or maybe it's 60% done, like I was with Pinstripe. What you do is you have a press kit. This is my little press kit. It's just a website, basically. You have a really pretty logo. You have a trailer. You have some quotes from people who've played the demo. In my case, I had some quotes from Kotaku, from Rolling Stone, PC Gamer. That was just because I reached out to them. And then you send this website along with the trailer and along with a Steam key or an HIO key. And those are just platforms that'll host your game. That makes it look really professional. You send this one press kit to publishers like Curve Games, Team 17, Serenity Forge, Armor Games. By the way, I've had conversations with all of these. And I had conversations with all of these companies before I even really found myself, before my studio found its footing, right? I was just basically a kid. I was like 24 years old. I was having conversations with all these people. I was nervous at first, but once you have a phone call with the CEOs of these companies, you're like, they're just people and they're just looking for great indie games. Once you have that conversation, you'll sign a deal. And well, the rest is history. Now, this is a way that what am I trying to say here? This is a slide that shows how I secured funding for Neversong. And by the way, it used to be called Once Upon a Coma. We changed the name to Neversong. But this is just an example of my Kickstarter campaign. So you can see here we raised over about almost $86,000, and the goal was $28,000, and this was raised in 30 days. You really have to have an understanding of how to launch products. One of my favorite books of all time is from Jeff Walker, and it's called Launch. Oddly enough, I read that book after I launched a Kickstarter campaign, but the principles still apply for launching anything. Launching games, launching Kickstarter campaigns, it's all pretty much the same. So I launched this Kickstarter campaign. It raised $86,000. And you can see here that on the right side of this slide, what makes a pitch, whether it's to a publisher, whether it's to your audience on social media, or whether it's to a Kickstarter audience, what makes it valuable, and we go really deep into this in the course, but what makes it super duper valuable is just having a really good, like a hyper polished demo. I like to think of it as a little diamond. It's a 15-minute tiny little diamond. And you send that to this audience. You pitch it to the Kickstarter audience, okay? It doesn't have to be a 40-minute game. It doesn't have to be a 6-hour game. Just a tiny little prototype, but it's the best prototype you've ever seen. You do your very best on that prototype. Then you throw in your personal story in the video. Most people think, I need to come across like some professional game studio. That's not what Kickstarter is looking for. The Kickstarter audience is looking for somebody to go, I make a lot of mistakes. I don't really like my job. I have this dream. Can you help me? That means so much more. That means so much more. And that little dream, that seed of a dream, putting that in the minds of your audience on Kickstarter with a Kickstarter video, what happens is they suddenly relate to you. So they're going to invest in your personal story more than some hyper-polished studio. I mean, honestly, why does a hyper-polished studio need money from Kickstarter anyway? So you need to be honest. Finally, just great digital rewards. And I say digital rewards because a lot of Kickstarter creators, they have a ton of physical rewards like t-shirts, hats, posters, signed posters. They don't realize that stuff adds up when it comes to the cost. So for me, I always said I'm going to do digital rewards. Really quick, here's a couple digital rewards that you can do to save money, but they're super high value for your audience. Name in the credits, right? So let's say somebody wants their name in the credits. They might be willing to spend $40 to see their name on the credits when they're playing the game on Nintendo Switch, when you finished it a year later, right? What I like to do is actually do tombstones. Sorry, my dog is in the room. He's sneezing. But I'll do like tombstones or statues or paintings of my audience, and I'll put them in the game. So overall, that's what leads to a great campaign. You can see it's personal. It's more about your heart and you than it is about being a super polished studio that sends out really nice t-shirts as part of their rewards for the campaign. And then finally, game sales. Actually, I just skipped a slide here. Apple Arcade. We talked about this earlier, but there's a few more. That, by the way, pitching to a platform is very similar to pitching to a publisher. And in fact, if you partner with a publisher, they're probably going to pitch to a platform for you. But if they don't, that's totally fine. You can do the same thing. You can pitch to Epic Games. You can say, I want to put my game on your platform instead of Steam. or I want to put my game on Google Stadia instead of Steam or instead of Epic Games. Or I want to put my game primarily on Xbox Game Pass and have it as part of this exclusive subscription service. The same is true with PlayStation. And then here you can see it says, tell us about your game. That's actually a screenshot from the Apple Arcade's website. So you can, as a developer, all you got to do is just send your pitch. And again, it's just an email like I've got here on the left side of this slide. It's just an email that you send to Apple Arcade, right? So oddly enough, this isn't as complicated or scary as most people think. And what I've found as I've moved forward in my career and just building businesses, whether it's building my online program or building my course or building YouTube, I can have a conversation with PewDiePie, for example, over Discord, and I realize this is all normal. This is all we're all just human beings, and none of this is as scary as it seems. When you haven't actually had a conversation with a platform or a publisher or a YouTuber, and you've never launched a game before, it all seems so foreign. It all seems so scary. But once you do it, you go, why was I scared to begin with? And I talk a lot about that in the program. Finally, game sales. You can see here $130,000 lifetime Steam revenue for Neversong, which we launched last year. If game sales was the only revenue for one platform, like if Steam sales, game sales was the only revenue, I don't think I would be in business. I might be squeaking by, but there's all these other revenue and it all drips into your bank account month after month after month. And so you kind of have to have a good understanding of where all this revenue is coming from and how to manage it and figure out where the majority of the revenue is coming from. You can't just focus on game sales. And I think most people do that. So really quick, how on earth does somebody get started in this? Because I can imagine most of you, especially those of you who are just starting out, all of this seemed really, really scary. Like it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to learn. Not only do you have to learn artwork and 3D modeling and code and Unity, you also have to learn all this marketing stuff. And it sounds like a nightmare. What's so funny is I never wanted to do any of this marketing stuff. Like I never wanted to do it. But oddly enough, I've come to really love it right now. Come here, buddy. Jeb, come. Sorry, my dog is really itchy right now. Come here, Jeb. Come on. Let me take your collar off. It's okay. Come here. So I think it's really important to remember that everything starts out really, really scary, right? Even like obviously, especially something like game development, and some things you don't even realize you enjoy. And so as a game studio owner, oddly enough, this stuff that I'm doing right now, marketing, sales pitching, webinars, preparing for Kickstarter campaigns, pitching to publishers, that's actually one of my favorite things to do. And when I first started doing game development, I thought I was going to be the reclusive guy who just does artwork. And I think a lot of you probably feel that way right now. You're thinking, I'm going to be the guy who codes. That's me. I'm not going to change. That's what I want to do. But the beauty of game development, the beauty of getting started in game development and sticking with it is you learn a lot about yourself. You learn that, you know what, I really love marketing and I really love storytelling and I really love writing music, right? So it's wonderful because there's like 20 different skill sets you get to learn. And you don't need to stress out, and I'll tell you why in a sec, because a lot of programs out there, like on Skillshare or Udemy or whatever, they'll focus on one little thing of game development, and you feel really excited after you've taken the course, and then you realize, crap, this is only 1 out of 20 things I need to learn. And so inside of my program, we do it all. It's a lot. It's a lot. And a lot of people will ask me, why is it $597? Well, it's significantly discounted for Black Friday. And there's also a free bonus course and stuff. But fortunately, that significant discount, it doesn't mean that it's a small course. It's a massive course. And we cover all this stuff here. And you can see this slice of the pie here, right here, that says Unity. There's a big chunk of the course that we cover with Unity, but also how to stay motivated. There's something I call the Game Design Bible. It's kind of like a game design document, which they teach in school. But a game design Bible is even bigger. And it includes maybe 25% of it is just how to stay motivated, how to stick with it. Because the biggest threat to any game developer is not finishing your game, and just starting 20 different projects. I think, how many of you in the chat, how many of you in the chat have like 3 or 4 folders on your computer right now of projects you quit? And so I teach about how to stay motivated, because you need to finish your games. I promise you, you need to finish your games. That's like the first step in actually making this thing a reality for you. I talk about Kickstarter. I talk about art in the program. What I love about Kickstarter actually is I give you sort of blueprints about how exactly you can make a great Kickstarter video. I even do like an emotional story arc, and you can fill in the blank of how to make it an emotional story in an honest way. But every story has an arc. Every good story has an arc, I think. And so I teach you how to do that with the Kickstarter blueprint. I teach how to get funding. I teach how to market. And I teach how to launch on Steam. Specifically, it's called the Steam Cannonball. That's what I call it. How do you get a game like Pinstripe? This is a Nintendo Switch copy, but how do you get a game like this, a tiny little indie game made by one dude? How do you get a game like that to make a huge splash on Steam and compete with these AAA games? I teach how to do that. And there's about, I think, 10 steps there. It's about reaching out to press, reaching out to YouTubers, streamers, posting on social media for years before you even launch your game. I teach all of that stuff. It's a massive program: marketing, funding, art, Kickstarter, motivation, tricks, Unity, and then most importantly, Steam launch. Really quick, don't want to bug you guys too much about the program, but I do have 2D and 3D art tutorials, 100 plus step-by-step videos. How to get funded from publishers, how to hit the Steam front page with marketing, and tutorials on how to do that. And then C#, Unity, again, 2D and 3D tutorials. And this is one of my audience's favorite, or one of my students' favorite parts is the workbooks. Downloadable, editable workbooks. That's hard to say. So those will be really helpful to you. Great reviews. It's been a gangbusters course. I'm actually really, really surprised by how successful it's been. We have over 2,500 students, and they love it. There's a Discord community, private Discord community, very active. And I don't have that many moderators. I don't really moderate myself because everybody's just really kind and considerate on that Discord server. And that's just really, really helpful. Having a community, I think that's one of the primary things that I feel took me so long in starting game development, is I didn't have people I could just ask questions to. So instead, I would take 3 months trying to figure out a solution to a problem. And then I come to find out somebody has the answer. I just could have just joined a Discord server. So that's why this private Discord server is so wonderful. And we all meet twice a month. So it's very communal. It's great. Really, really awesome. So just a few success stories to keep in mind here. These are two of my favorite ones, more recent ones. This game called Wild Dose was funded on Kickstarter, and it was featured at Games Made in France, which is really cool. And it's actually coming soon to Steam. The same is true with this game, Bulletville. This is a bigger game made by a bigger studio, but one of my students was involved in the Kickstarter campaign and used what they learned in my program. So very successful Kickstarter campaign, over $100,000 raised, and it's coming soon to Steam. Really cool. So just keep in mind, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. I love Q&A. Q&A is my favorite. I do Q&As a lot on my YouTube channel as well, so I can't wait to hear you guys' questions. But really quick, just keep in mind that this is the biggest sale event for full-time game dev of the year. It's going to be another year before we have a sale event this massive. I've been planning this sale event. I'm really, really excited about this sale event because the course is so cheap right now. Like it's cheap is not a good word because it's a massive program, but it's 50% off right now. And then 2D Art Pro, which is a $297 program that I just launched. I launched that, I think it was in August. It teaches you how to master 2D art. And obviously full-time game dev covers 2D art as well, but this program in particular is taking it to the next level. And I teach you pretty much all of my tricks. A lot of people wonder why I'm willing to give up my tricks. It's not because I'm a generous person, all right? It's not because I'm humble and I want everybody to know what I know. It's because I'm making 3D games now. So I'm totally fine sharing my 2D tricks. That's the honest. I try to be honest of why I'm doing things. I'm totally fine sharing my secrets with 2D because I'm making 3D games now. So 2D, it's not because they're more profitable or anything. I'm just ready to move on to 3D because I've been doing 2D for 10 years. So that's a totally free program, and it's only for this Black Friday sale event. Again, this is not going to happen again for another year. And I don't even know if I'll go this steep. So just wanted to let you guys know if you're interested, check that out. All right. Well, I think we're ready for Q&A if you guys are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I love the whole process, and especially just like I have to this is going to lead into a question, and
Yeah.
real quick just want to say a couple things for everyone watching. Start popping any questions in there. I'm going to go back and catch a few that I saw come in earlier that I thought were really good. And then also the links for that course are in the description and in the comment section, and will be emailed to you if you RSVP'd for the event. But that discount is only for a week, so
Yeah.
you can think about it for a couple days, but don't sit on it too long.
Yeah.
And so let's jump in. We got a ton of questions.
Great.
So I want to try and get in. And this was what I saw early on that I think is just a great one to cover right off the bat, which is Redbeard is asking. And I want to clarify too, like you do all your own art, right?
Yeah. So I started out like it's a long journey, but I started out doing everything. Everything. So
Mm,
from 16 to 24 years old, maybe I think 25 years old, I just did everything. I thought that was what you were supposed to do. And that's why
right.
things took so long. I wrote the music, I did the illustration, I did the code, I did everything. I did the marketing. That's how a lot of people wonder, like, why does Thomas know how to do all this stuff? It's because I was kind of a moron in the sense that I didn't know how to work with a team. I was I kind of cocky. Um, and I might come across that way sometimes. I'm really not now, but I was very cocky when I was a teenager. I wanted to do everything. And now
Was
what
it
I teach is
particular too, though? Like you wanted it a specific way?
I thought that like okay, I thought that if you were going to make a cohesive game that was artsy and that everybody felt like it was cohesive, you had to do it all on your own. And what I'm
Mm,
learning now is I'm like, no, you can find a team. And there's actually a podcast of me saying that when I was younger. I wish I could get rid of the podcast because it's it's not true. I work with a team now. So this game behind me, that's Neversong. That game was developed by a guy named Eric Coburn at Serenity Forge, my publisher. So he was my developer. I was the artist. It's hard to artist and
yep.
musician. The marketing was done by Serenity Forge. This game, Pinstripe, was my first game. This was everything. Everything was me. Now
Mm,
porting it to Nintendo Switch, I made some money off of the sales on Steam to actually pay $7,000 to get this ported to Switch. So that was the
mm.
first time, one of the first times I partnered with somebody was porting, because porting to
Okay.
console is a pain in the butt. And I don't lie to my students. I'm not like, hey, everybody can port to console. Everybody can make great games and put them on every platform. No, like you can do it on Steam, but getting to the next level, you should have a team. And
Yeah.
that's sort of, again, that's the next level. Launching on Steam and itch.io is pretty straightforward, but launching on Switch is another story.
Cool. Well, and then to specifically answer Redbeard's question, which you did but I want to just like totally hone in. Do you need to learn art to take part in being an
Yeah.
indie developer?
No, you don't. And first reason is you can partner with people, and that's why I love the Discord server. That's part of my program. But you can find. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys you have to be part of my program to partner with people. You can partner with people anywhere. The Discord server that I have is just much easier to find people. So that's the
Right.
first reason is you can find somebody who can do art and then you can do code. What I teach is you need to do whatever you're good at. So lean into your forte, and then you need to find other people to do it for you, the other stuff you suck at. So for me, I suck at code. Um, actually, I'm really bad at coming up with good gameplay mechanics. I'm a story guy.
Hmm.
I'm an art guy. But the second thing is this. You can actually make a game that isn't very artistically pleasing, but it does catch your eye. It's hard to explain. So like there's a game called Thomas Was Alone. It's just squares. And I actually just posted a video yesterday on my YouTube channel, if you guys want to check it out, of me making beautiful artwork with just squares. You can make great looking games that aren't illustrative and aren't fancy like this, like hand drawn look. Another game, Super Hot. Super Hot is a 3D game. It doesn't look like Call of Duty. It doesn't look like Firewatch even. Firewatch is an indie game. Super Hot, and Super Hot was actually an indie game next to my booth when I was younger at South by Southwest, I believe. But Super Hot, it's like the graphics catch your eye, but you would never say, man, this game looks amazing, right?
Right.
So artwork is not something that you have to understand, but you do need to understand how to catch people's attention. Indie game developers are fighting with AAA. We're fighting with Hollywood. We're fighting with Seattle, Austin, Texas, New York City. I think a lot of the cities in Canada are really big game cities as well. We're competing. Guys, I'm in the middle of Greenville, South Carolina. I'm in South Carolina, and I'm surrounded by trees. There's trailers down the road. I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. Greenville's growing right now, but I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. I don't need these big cities. I don't need all of this talent to be able to make great games, but I do need to know how to catch attention. And there's a big difference. And I teach how to do that in my course.
That's so valuable. Okay.
Yeah.
Love it. This is a good question relative to your course, but also just in the bigger game world. How to make Maxims is asking how to make crowdfunding if not in a country that allows Kickstarter, but just also like in your course or in general, are there Kickstarter alternatives, other routes to that crowdfunding?
I think it's a great question. I think that Indiegogo is another alternative. But I recommend this to anybody. We talked about this earlier in the webinar, and you might be familiar with this as well. The book Launch by Jeff Walker is an incredible book. Jeff Walker is a master of launching digital products. So whether here's the thing, people don't understand that Kickstarter and Indiegogo are basically pre-order campaigns, and you don't have to rely on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Patreon. You don't have to give them a percentage of your revenue for these pre-launch campaigns. You don't have to. They make it a lot easier for you, but you don't have to. There's plugins for WordPress where you can do a campaign all on your own. The difference is that Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Patreon, they sort of push it to their audience as well.
Right.
Like Discover, you guys have, Teachable has an email list, right? I've got an email list of like 27,000 people. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, those platforms have their own email lists. They've got a front page that they drive traffic from their email list to. So that's really what you're getting. Like, let's say you understand a little bit about how to make a website and you know how to use plugins on WordPress. If you've got your own email list and you've got your own fan base of maybe 5 to 25,000 people, do a pre-order campaign that way to build revenue. You don't have to rely on Kickstarter. Kickstarter just makes it easier. And again, they've got a big email list.
Well, and you could do that even before going to Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you can do that before and then jump over to Kickstarter. Exactly.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
This is, I love the next question, but also just that it like started a whole like row in the comments of people just going off. But I always felt like Emmanuel was asking, I always felt like funding could be scary. Like, what if a game flops and I let all those people down who supported it? And it feels like a ton of pressure, which just started this whole conversation in the chat of just people like back and forth about the positives, the negatives of that pressure. But like, what's your take on that? I mean, it's part of how you've done it, and I'm sure it's scary, but I'm curious what the positives also you think.
There's this thing. Yeah, this is great. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. There's this thing in the indie game industry, and it's probably true for any entrepreneurial, artsy career path. People call their project their baby. It's my baby. Well, I have kids. I've got 2 babies. They make you really stressed, and just the thought. I don't know if any of you have ever seen Eraserhead, but Eraserhead is about the horror of having a kid because they're so vulnerable. And I can assure you, your game is not your baby. It's not even close. But you feel this pressure that everyone's watching, and you're going to make a mistake. And if I get a bad review, oh my goodness, I couldn't handle it. It's my baby.
Right.
It's not a baby. It's a silly game. And here's the thing, even if your game made $1 million, most people won't even know about it in the world.
Right.
Excuse me. So I think it's really important that people try not to feel the spotlight effect. And for those of you who are curious, you can Google the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is everybody's watching. No, they're not. Nobody cares. And even if PC Gamer, they really don't. And even if PC Gamer covers you, I had an article come out. I remember I was driving in my car. I had just launched Neversong on Steam. And I got a text message from my publisher, and he said, "Oh no." And he sent me a link. And I clicked the link, and it was PC Gamer had written it wasn't a hit piece, but it felt like it at the time. Basically, they had covered how I had made a mistake with my Kickstarter campaign. Fortunately, you guys can learn from my mistakes. I had accidentally distributed 3,000 keys to my game per backer. So every backer got 3,000 keys each. And so PC Gamer did an article on this. And you know what I did? I immediately emailed the writer and I said, "Thanks for the coverage. It meant a lot. That was a funny story." And then you fix the problem. And then you know what the comments were? People were like, "It's not a big deal. He's an indie game developer. This is kind of funny. It's not a big deal." GameStop gave me a 5 out of 10 for Pinstripe. This game right here. And it wasn't even on Switch yet. And you know what I did? I said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" I talked to the writer and had a great conversation, and now we're friends.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So my point is that stop taking yourself so seriously. And I'm a very honest, blunt guy, so I apologize if I'm coming across that way. But nobody cares. Make great games. Some people in the press, on Twitter, especially Twitter, social media, on YouTube, they get destroyed. They get ratioed, terrible comments. But you know what? They have their career is blowing up. They make plenty of money and they have a following. So don't worry about everybody looking at you while you're trying to secure funding. And you said here, Emmanuel, you said, "What if my game flops?" It's gonna. Every first game, every second game flops. And what I do is make sure, like, this is your first game, just drop it in the bin, and it flops, let it go. Let it go. So I always say, for those of you who have games on your computers right now, like folders, and they're incomplete, upload that to itch.io, call it your first game, let the bad reviews flow in, embrace it, grow a thicker skin, and now you're ready to go. Now you can actually make your dream game. Your first game should be crap.
Right. And just to highlight, I think one of the cool things you said about like reaching out to some of your critics is like, these people don't know you, they don't hate you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're willing to like put your ego and talk to them, you might learn something, make a better game next time. I love that perspective of like, because it can feel like a personal attack.
It does.
It's like, they don't know you.
And even better, here's even better. And I think we're all realizing this slowly. It's not necessarily that the press has bad intentions. It's that they've got different intentions than reviewing a game honestly. I'm not saying it was dishonest. I'm just saying sometimes there's different reasons why a review comes out. So if your game gets crapped on by reviewers and like press outlets and YouTubers, they have their own reasons. So for example, YouTubers can go, "The worst game I've ever played." Well, the reason they put that title isn't because it was the worst game they ever played.
It's to get views.
It was to get clicks. And I'm not saying that's wrong, because I do some of that stuff for my YouTube channel. I'll do a big, bold title, and it's like, you know, it's honest. It's just not what the entire video is about. So we need to, in the new age of social media, and as metaverse becomes a thing, we all need to stop taking our digital identities so freaking seriously. It's all kind of a joke. So we just need to slow down, take it easy, make games, and have fun. Don't worry about it.
Right. I love that perspective. Coming from the music industry, I'm just like, I want to shovel that into every musician I know and myself as well. Yeah. Love it.
Exactly.
Great question coming in from Slothy Bones. I love, by the way, I just want to call out that like the screen names in this event are the most creative I've seen of all.
They'll probably probably a creative audience because they're interested in making games.
Yeah. So have you ever had a great idea that you regret scrapping making Pinstripe or Neversong?
No. I think that Pinstripe and Neversong, for me, and I try and tell my students this and my audience on YouTube, if you feel something deep down, if chills run up and down your spine, It doesn't matter what the concept is. It doesn't matter what the theme is. You should go for it. And the reason why is because for me, Pinstripe, I grew up in the South. So there's a ton of religious stuff in Pinstripe, religious themes, and so that stuff is in my blood, and so I loved creating Pinstripe because there's a lot of fun little strange Catholic themes going on and I'm getting chills now because it's just part of how I grew up. The reason I say no matter what your idea is, if it makes you feel something, you should do it. The reason I say that is because for your first, second, and third game, you need that emotional energy and fuel to get through. You need to be madly infatuated with your project because in a year you won't be. So can you imagine what that energy would be if you were making a game just because you thought people would think it's cool?
Right.
A year down the road, that energy is going to be zapped and you're going to quit your game. So you need to marry yourself to something you're infatuated with that you truly, genuinely love deep down, because that's going to wane. So you need as much of it at the start as possible.
Got it. I love that. And sorry, I'm catching up here because I'm trying to get through all the questions and you just keep throwing them down. I love it. So it's already in advance, we have a little more time, but sorry everyone if I don't get to all of these. But is visual scripting limited in any way compared to the regular coding? This comes from a conversation that was happening, and I believe it was Mobile Tech Geek that was also saying like struggling with just attention, ADHD, coding being very difficult to like get behind. What alternatives are there? And then the chat led into visual scripting and all of that. So within that whole context, this question specifically, but also like within that whole context, you have some opinions, thoughts?
Yeah. So I have nothing against visual scripting. I think that if you don't, there is no better time in human history than to use a visual scripting asset like Blueprint in Unreal or Playmaker. Hollow Knight was made with Playmaker, and I saw somebody said that in a comment. You should do that. If you don't know C#, I recommend you learn a little bit of it. But if coding isn't your forte, don't spend the time becoming a master coder. Become a master playmaker. Become a master at Blueprint or any of the assets available on the Unity. I mean, the Unity asset store is incredible. The tools available. So a buddy of mine, his name is David Whaley. His games make more money than mine, and he made a game with no code and just used assets. So don't let that's gatekeeping. When this happens all over the place, maybe Reddit is a good example of people who are like, this is the way you should make a game. And then it gets upvoted. And so you feel like, okay, well, if this got upvoted and it's the top upvoted comment, they must be right. And I'm an idiot. No, it's just Reddit and Reddit's dumb. So you want to make sure that your brain is oriented towards get it done. Not what do people tell me I should do? What is the community saying I should do? Sure, there's plenty of people out there who know what to do. I would say if you're going to listen to people, though, listen to the people who have launched games and do it full time. And so coming from somebody who does it, just get it done. Don't worry about how it's done. Just get it done. And that's oftentimes just use assets. Just use assets and be okay with that. We need to be humble enough. And that's why I say back to the baby thing, don't treat it like a baby because it's not, for one. But secondly, it's going to make it easier for you to use assets because it's not going to be a pride point for you. You're willing to use other people's work.
Right. That's awesome. Love it. Question from FM Productions. What mistakes did you make when you released your games, and what things are you careful about on release day or the week leading up to it? Like maybe some specific advice about the release process.
Yeah. So this comes back to like my second or third slide, which is about game sales and revenue. So if you're, especially like me, and you're married young and you've got a daughter on the way, that's what it was for me when I was launching Pinstripe. Everything was riding on Pinstripe making enough money for us to survive. Like it had to, in my head at least. I was like, I have to make $60,000 so that I can live on that next year. Well, the game launched and it was slow. Fortunately, over time, it made about $300,000 gross, $350,000 gross, I think. I can't get the exact number, but point is that when that launched, I was really depressed for like 2 weeks because I thought I'm going to have to go back to work. And what I realized, and comes to the mistake, is you need to orient your head towards multiple revenue streams and spinning multiple plates. Okay. There's a lot of different ways to make money as an artist. Like, there is no better time in human history to be a free-spirited artist than right now. And that includes Patreon, Kickstarter, YouTube, sponsorship deals, publishers, platforms. It's not just game sales. So that's the primary mistake that I made, which was relying so heavily on game sales and not realizing there's way more income coming from other places. And in fact, game sales is one of my smaller income streams right now.
Right. Well, and so I'm curious with game development. Sorry, everyone, I'm sneaking in my own question, but I know, like, from the music world and even video and stuff, you can do a lot of, like, maybe making money from a few places at once. So you go out and shoot a video for something, whatever you don't deliver to the client, if it's not contractually theirs, you can sell as stock footage. Music, you can write songs that also cut into beats and stuff. Are there elements like that with game development, or is it a little harder to parse out those?
Can you target that question a little bit more for me? I want to make sure I answer it right. So can you maybe rephrase it in a sentence?
Yes. If you're building a game and there's elements that you don't use for the game or that stand alone on there as themselves.
Yes.
Are there markets where you can sell those things even while you're working on a game? So you're not like, so that's what I mean, like making multiple products at once.
Oh yeah. Here's what I love. This is a quote that I heard from David Whaley, again, one of my buddies who made a game with assets. He said, the people who make tools for the gold rush make more money than the people who are in the gold rush.
Right. Yeah.
And so when it comes to asset creation, I sell assets. Well, we're launching one called Classic FPS Shooter. It's like Doom style. I'm releasing that on the asset store. And then a few other assets as well. And then I also have tools in my programs as well. So there's like this collage of tons of stuff that you can create and sell as a game developer. It's not just making games. It's just a ton of other things. And just wait for the metaverse. Just wait, because people are going to be selling NFTs. They're going to be selling NFTs so fast, and they're going to be there's going to be stories of billionaire indie game developers who made 1 or 2 NFTs. So I want that to be me, but
right. Well, and I just wanted to highlight, because I think when a lot of creators say you can do this and you can do that, but like it doesn't always mean now you have to go do all of those things. You just have to know where to parse things out, and it doesn't, like, not just more work. It's being clever.
2 ways to consider that. First one is, what's your forte? What are you really good at? Because a lot of people they have trouble focusing on where should I focus. The second thing is fail a lot, because when you fail a lot at trying to sell a product, like a game, for example, you figure out what not to do and where to focus, right? And so for me, I've figured out where I'm into building wealth, especially because I have a family now and a daughter and a son. And so I look at, okay, where's the income coming from when it comes to game development? And how do I focus my energy there I want to do that for a couple of years just to build some wealth. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so we're creeping up on time here, so I'm going to try and get to as many of these as possible. But and how are you doing? You're cool if we keep popping through?
Yeah. Let me let my dog out the door. He's like panting. I think he's really hot.
Love it. I love it. Just thank you again, everyone. This is such a blast. You're all just so active, and I love how you're answering each other's questions and working out aspects about mindset and everything. It's such a joy to have such a community here. But Love Bites had a general question, but very relative, I know, to this field. Like, do you have a story about burnout or any advice on like avoiding burnout in the process? Because it sounds like, especially in the early days when you were doing everything, like you must have reached some blocks there.
Yeah, I got in trouble on Twitter, which, surprise, everybody gets in trouble on Twitter. But I posted a tweet and I said, if you're burnt out, power through. You're going to be okay. And everyone got mad, like, no, you shouldn't do that. And I understand the point there, which is like, if it's like what I mean by real is like a really big mental problem and you're burnt out, don't power through. Go talk to somebody, get some help. I understand. But my main point is if you're burnt out, you're exhausted, or you're bored of your project, you're probably okay, and you probably need to just get it done. You'll be okay. Most people will be okay, and I think the majority of us think we can't handle hard work,
Sure.
but we can handle it more. My story of burnout, this is fun. My story of burnout was with when I was making Once Upon a Coma, which became Neversong. That was my second commercial release. I was burnt out because it was very similar in style to Pinstripe. You can see back there, it's very similar to this sort of artsy illustrative style. So I was kind of burnt out because like another 2D game. I don't really want to do this again. But you know what I did is I said, not only am I going to power through and get it done, and believe me, it was worth it. I'm glad I got it done because we made some decent money. The second thing that I did is I said, I'm going to take this story of burnout and I'm going to use that as an asset. And so what I did was I said, Kickstarter and YouTube, I'm going to put that story all over. And so I used that story, not through manipulation. You got to be really, really careful. But I was honest. I was very honest. I'm burnt out. I need support. I need community support. And I also need financial support. And that was my Kickstarter message for Neversong. And that's what propelled it to $86,000. That's what was able to get it covered by Game Grumps and Jacksepticeye. And that sort of that being honest about burnout and being exhausted was really helpful when it came to telling stories and well, honestly, promoting games. If you can tell a story and be honest, it's a lot easier to sell your products.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think to tag on, like, I think a lot of people don't think they have a story.
Yeah, no, yeah.
How do you tap into it? Do you have any advice on just like,
well, if
getting comfortable with that, like telling your own story, or finding like they think most people think they're unremarkable in some way or another?
My wife, and I've told this story before with my audience, but my wife, and she's correct, so I'm not throwing her under the bus here. She once told me, she said, Thomas, you are the most spoiled white guy I know. And what she meant was, I haven't had any real problems. My life is great. Like I've had one of the most blessed, lucky lives I can think of anybody. And I know that. But I also understand that what's going on in here is not what's going on out here. So deep down in my heart, my soul, or whatever, there's turmoil. There's a lot going on. And so the best way to understand your story and how you use that to, well, for one, put it as an ingredient into your game. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to make a good game, especially if it's a story game. But the second reason why you need to tap into that is for marketing purposes, or this is super important, being an influencer on social media. Because if you can be an influencer on social media and make games, that's like you're in the crosshairs of success. And that's what I'm figuring out right now. But my point is that you need to be humble enough to admit to yourself where your flaws are, and then admit those publicly. And it's great. It works out. And so just be honest with yourself. The best advice I can give is, if you don't know what's going on in here, because a lot of people they don't fully understand themselves, it's probably a pride thing. You look so highly at yourself, and you're so important to yourself. This is really important for art. It really is, for being an artist. So what I like to do is I like to pretend, this is kind of weird, but I'll pretend I'm in the corner. My spirit or my soul is in the corner of my room, and I'll look down on my body while I work, and I'll pretend it's an avatar, like in the metaverse. And I'll go, what would I tell my character to do in this situation, in this entrepreneurial situation? Because the truth is because this is we think it's our body. We go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do something. But if it was a character in a video game, we'd know exactly where the coins were and where the upgrades were. And we would go right there. Yeah. Right. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to making video games, you've got to treat it like a video game. I say treat your career like it's an RPG. If you do that, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be okay with making mistakes. It's like, well, it's just my avatar. And so I try and distance myself from me, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of weird, but that's what I do.
No, I think that's really valuable, because it's easy to, you also, like, you wouldn't tell yourself to, like, you're a little tired, so take today
I
off. You'll
know.
be like, no, work a little more or do
Yeah.
that thing. So I love that.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone, I'm sorry, we only have time for one more question, but I wanted to get to this one because I think it's relevant and then ties back a little bit just to like about your course as well. But
Mhm.
something I was wondering is like, how do you prepare a cash flow forecast for a
Yeah.
good indie game? And also just like, I imagine it's also like, how do you pitch to publishers and all of this
Yeah.
when you may not have the game is the and I'm sure
Yeah.
you teach that in your course, but like can you give
Yes.
us the TLDR on
Yeah, totally. I'll give you the rundown. And 50% of the course is all on marketing and how to build wealth. Wealth is not a good word. Production cost for your game before you even launch it. And again, guys, just to let you know before I close out here, it's 50% off right now. And a massive chunk of this course, which isn't taught anywhere else, at least in one concise course, is how you build that cash flow before you even launch your game. The way that I teach it, especially when it comes to publishers, is you don't just send emails. I'll give you a couple tips here. You don't just send emails to their like submission form on their website. So for example, Curve Games, they used to be called Curve Digital, but they're called Curve Games now. You don't just go to their website and submit your game. Why? Because thousands of people are doing this every month, and they're probably exhausted working on a launch for another game. What you do is you creep on people. And I teach how to do this in the course. You find people's email addresses. So for example, it's like, dude, like if I wanted to get in contact with Teachable, or Discover, I wouldn't, what I would do is I would find you on Twitter, and then I would find your personal email address, and then I would pitch something to you. The
right, or
same
even
is
like
true with-
LinkedIn, people list those things. You can
Totally.
search it and stuff. Yeah.
Totally. So I actually have, this
That's
is why I love interns, and I fully disclose this. My interns, what they do for me often is during a pitch, whether it's pitching to a publisher, is I go, hey, I need 200 personal email addresses of people who work at publishing companies. And then they'll be like, oh, Thomas, no, don't do this to me. But they'll spend a week full time just putting together this private list of emails. And then I pitch to each one of them personally in an email.
mm,
And then I do the same with YouTubers. I do the same with live streamers. You can do the same with platforms. Say who are
right.
the top 3 guys at Stadia, or who's in charge of finding projects at Google Stadia or Epic Games.
This
And then
is
you email
dangerous
them.
information right now. There's people who are gonna hate you for saying
Oh, I know. And that's what's so funny to me is everybody who wants to be in an industry, and you learn a lot from this, like from Gary Vee. He's one of my favorites, but you learn that being like understanding, once you start to understand a particular industry, you're like, oh, this is really kind of raw and
Mhm.
boring and not high tech. For example, one of the most profitable things you can have as an entrepreneur is an email list. And people are like, oh, okay, I'll do that later because email's old. It's like, no, emails are super important. An email list is your bread and butter. You guys know this at Discover. It's
the only thing
super
you own.
important. Yes. And so you want to make
Yeah.
sure that you have an email list. And more importantly, to sort of make this a theme of the end of this conversation, is the things you thought were high tech and cool are actually things you've probably already understood a long time. For
Mm,
example, pitching to publishers, get a great website together with your trailer, and then pitch it to 200 members of the press or 200 members of these publishing studios. And it's just email. And it's just knowing
yeah.
how to craft emails and that grunt work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Thomas, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Just your philosophy and everything around game development. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no problem, Jonah.
I'm
It was
I'm
fun.
going immediately now to subscribe to your YouTube. I want to hear
Thanks.
more.
Thanks, man.
And speaking of that, where's the best place for people to find you, to ask any questions if
Yeah.
they have any?
Yeah, they can obviously head on over to fulltimegamedev.com. They can
Mhm.
also enroll in the course, 50%
Right.
off. There's my
Right.
plug. But they can also go to YouTube and just type Thomas Brush, and my face will pop up and they can subscribe. And I
Love
post all the time, and I do live streams like this all the time.
Heck yeah. Well, and just to clarify again for everybody, the links to those courses are in the description and in the comments. They'll also be emailed to you after with the replay. So thank you all so much for being here. Please also head to the link in the description to check out this full week, this Discover Fest week. We have the full schedule and all the past videos. We're having a total blast learning about all manner of things right now. And once again, Thomas, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Yeah, it's fun, Jonah. Thanks.
Pleasure. See you later.